team building phase, I call it that, of pre-qualification, which is a very important phase in the life of any project, because it allows a client to understand and select a corporate team, to set out what they want, to communicate and establish the commercial financial framework. It allows them to select people on the basis of skills, track record, costs, to assess capability, and through all of that, you're driving the formation of the right team in parallel with selection of the right contractors to build your infrastructure project. As I said, I've seen it done very well, and I've seen it done quite poorly. The best examples I think I ever saw were in New Zealand. And I think perversely, some of the worst examples I've ever seen are actually in this country, where there's the Treasury Green Book, which defines what value for money is for the British taxpayer, and everything is done almost on the basis of cost. And you really see some ludicrous consequences arriving out of that poor establishment of the ground rules at the beginning, poor creation of teams, and it leads to the inevitability of drama-filled headlines in the national press about some clown who's given a contract to a jeweler to provide 200 million quid's worth of PPE or something like that. It's just endemic. Anyway, there we go. That's my starter for 10.
Kevin, you're muted.
I was following the rule of muting myself. So yeah, let me pick that up. So that's a really interesting experience. And the government has clearly been trying to respond to some of that, because they came up with Project 13. And our next guest, Martin Perks of Highways England. Martin, you've been doing a lot of great work on the RDP program to try and take Project 13 and make it real in the highways world, and appointed a number of partners, potential partners and integrators. So we'd welcome your input and perhaps thoughts on what Jeremy's just been saying.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, it's been an experience. We've ended up appointing and spending 3 months under RDP doing simply team building, behavioural specialists leading that, challenging teams to understand the real basics of what each team member holds as their understanding of collaboration and integration, and working that through so that we get a consistent view. We've done that on 18 different teams all at the same time. And then more recently in the Smart Motorway Alliance, that moved to a 6 month process. So in building an alliance, we felt that as a business, we needed more time to build those relationships and establish them and create them as a solid foundation to move forward. And that, both of those experiences were an evolution from the space that Jeremy described. And historically, we've experienced that sort of chucking people together and assuming that because they've all read the contract, of course not, that they all understand what the rational behaviour looks like, and consequently they'll all be on as one and pointing in the same direction and moving joyously towards the objective for the scheme. And as Jeremy explained, that's been a massively rare exception, not the norm. And so we're now, when we put teams together, spending time before we do anything in the project spend space about team building and creating cohesiveness and common alignment.
So thanks for that. So far, Jeremy, you suggested that the Green Book and value for money, driving value for money cost has been a pressure. Martin, you referred to how you're trying to spend more time in team building. We also have with us today Julia Pike. Good morning, Julia. Julia is sitting in the middle of perhaps one of the most important infrastructure projects that we can imagine. That's electricity generation and Sizewell C, and trying to secure the funding for that project. And I just wondered, Julia, as you think about the pressures you're under to get that done, how that might impact mobilisation.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's a really interesting topic because Sizewell is currently owned majority by EDF, but its purpose in life is to move into the ownership of government and pension funds in the future. And so it's being created in order to leave the group. And structuring team dynamics in an environment where we're not quite sure if the project will get the go-ahead from government. We're optimistic, but we don't know for sure. On the other hand, for the project to be a success, we have to set up for success and we have to prepare the project as though it's definitely going to happen, get our supply chain in place, get the right people in. And at the same time, we're looking to move out of the EDF group and into sort of more diverse ownership. And so I would have said that the way we are managing to do this is through the sense of mission, that because people are so passionate about decarbonising and showing what nuclear can do, showing that we can reduce costs, showing that we can make more than electricity, we can make heat, hydrogen, we can power direct air capture, etc. It's the sense of mission which keeps it together through what would otherwise be some quite difficult challenges, essentially of uncertainty.
And so one of the things that we'll perhaps think about later is that there's costs to doing all this team building and where those costs should sit and how they should be distributed. But just before we get into sort of thinking about best practice, perhaps it'd be a good idea, Stu, to just look at the other thoughts that people had from the Mentimeter poll.
Yeah, so for those that came late, a few of you come on since we started, go into your phone, type in menti.com in your browser at the top there, you'll see, and you'll be invited to put a code in. Put the code in, and you put up to 5 words of what you what your experience of mobilisation is. And we've got 3 words there, so that's just only one of you have done those 3 words. So it's not much of a word cloud at the moment, it's just a word list. And we'll let that build as we talk about that. Julia, I just want to pick up on something you said while we're just waiting for that to build. How does that, so you described your situation. At some point, presumably, assuming you get the green light, there will then be mobilisation. How are you going to try and overcome this fact that you'll have spent a lot of time getting to the point at which you're ready to go, and then there may be huge time pressure on getting the thing done? How do you build a team at that point?
Well, that is a really good question. So, I mean, one of the consequences of uncertainty, for example, is that the project tends to rely on hiring in consultants rather than employing people, because of course we can't offer people at the moment long-term job security. And so one of the first things we'll have to do is to decide what's the balance we actually really want between employees of the project and consultants. And in terms of mobilising, we have to, as I said, we have to plan for delivering the project to the timeline we think is optimal for the project. We have to have everything in place. We have to have all of these big contracts. We're asking people like Laing O'Rourke, who have 2,000 people on Hinckley, to plan to bring those 2,000 people over to Sizewell in the schedule we think will work. And so really we're reliant on huge collective goodwill, huge collective commitment. We tend in these projects always to talk about the developer. You know, the nuclear industry tends to talk about EDF or Westinghouse or Rolls-Royce, but the vast majority of the people who build these projects are in our UK supply chain. So it's about this really huge collective effort by British industry to get the project into a place where it can mobilise and deliver, even while we wait for government policy to be completely clear.
Jeremy, you're on the borderline, aren't you? Or you were, may still be. For an organisation like that, when you get to mobilisation, what issues arise from this kind of, we've finally got the decision, let's get going? What happens?
It seems to me that what Julia's describing is a project that hasn't got a business case. And I think not having a proper business case at the beginning is absolutely fatal to the progress of anything. If there's not a business case there, then life and the project and effort just stumbles along, because in earlier words of Julia, there is no sense of mission. People don't know why they're there. The players don't know how they're going to derive value from it. There's no established client, there's no established program, time frame, cost structure, budget, etc., etc., etc. So that absence of a business case and the inability to establish a proper commercial and financial framework, I think, is fatal to the good and timely progress of a project. And you know, that the essence of team building is that you know, as I said earlier on, it starts with a pre-qualification phase where the client has got to be clear on what it is they want, this business case, and allowing the formation of a good and a proper team. And you know, good project management, good program management starts right at the very beginning. And I think in one of these earlier webinars, I came up with a phrase that 90% of the ultimate cost of a project is determined in the first 10% of the program. And so by neglecting good team building, by neglecting commercial cost and budgetary frameworks right at the beginning, it inevitably leads to disjointed progress throughout the life of that project, and then disappointment. You know, and in the case of government projects, you know, you get disappointment with the performance of ministers, poor communication with advisors, bad media headlines. You know, the HS2 that started off at 36 billion, I can remember in 2010, has now become 106 billion, etc., etc., etc.
If I can remember one thing you said earlier that struck me, without a shared ambition, without shared behaviours set out early, the idea that a major project will stumble across a combined outcome that was valuable to all parties was unlikely, to say the least.
Yeah.
But you can just say, I didn't say there wasn't a mission. I said that we recognise all the challenges you've just outlined, Jeremy, but that it is the fact that we do have a sense of mission which is enabling us to overcome them. So to look at readiness, we've engaged both Oxford Global Projects and the IPA organisation, not IPA, the Infrastructure Projects Authority, but the American organisation run by Ed Merrow, which studies mega projects, and we are developing enablers to demonstrate readiness. And it is this sense of absolute commitment not only to net zero, but also to demonstrating that nuclear can replicate, it can deliver cost savings, that is keeping the team together and enabling it to build in the face of the challenge of waiting for government policy.
So this has been really valuable as a way of starting us thinking about, you know, what are the issues, and looking at the word cloud as we can all see it. We can see that there's some positives about humour and it's essential, but also this strong sense of frustration, disconnected, overlooked. So what we want to move to is, what would best practice be? And you're all in the world, you've come to this to share some thinking. What we're going to do is we're going to move you into a breakout room. So obvious rules, but let's just remind ourselves, please appoint a spokesman. I'd ask you not to do the who you are and what you do in terms of a march of death around the room. Put in the chat box, you know, introduce yourselves via the chat box. You can all see it, and it only stays in your breakout room. The question we want you to discuss for 6 minutes, what is a best practice in mobilisation team building? And have 1 or 2 maximum examples that your spokesperson will share on return. If you've got Mentimeter running, you can take these instructions with you. We're going to send you now to the breakout rooms.
Okay.
Timer?
11:20
now. That's fine.
Great.
Whew.
Hold on, is it just 2 of us on there?
Yeah, just us 2 left. It's tried to send me and I declined, so that was all right.
Okay. The so 11:25. We need to send them a moment.
That's right, Stu.
Oh, I'm being told that a couple of people are trying to connect and haven't been able to do so.
You have to pick them up and put them into the room.
No. The Zoom is saying you have another meeting in progress when joining from the invite.
Well, I tried it. I went through the Eventbrite. I registered and it let me in. Just give them the number.
Yeah. What is the number?
The number is 859.
Yeah.
5167.
Yeah.
3608, and the participant ID is 334049. Is that what they need?
No, you don't need a participant. The Zoom number should be enough, and they'll come to the waiting room.
I believe that's correct. Let me repeat it, just make sure. 859 5167 3608. How frustrating. We haven't got. Anyway, the content's going over. Is it's working.
Yeah, I think that started it very well, because I was a bit thrown by trying to get people to join and get them in, and oh god, I think this format it's difficult, but you can't do breakout rooms in webinars, can you? So if we're going to have breakout rooms, we have to have this format. It's just this is where the benefit of having a producer is. You're having another, because I was trying to do an introduction while at the same time clicking admit.
Yeah, no.
I think one lesson
next time we do it, I'll be host and you be if you're whoever's doing the intro shouldn't be the host. That's the
same thing. It's exactly right. Yeah. I mean,
anyway, their points are good, and we got a little bit of Jeremy didn't hear what she said, and she politely.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad she came in, actually, because he said there wasn't a mission, and she said specifically we're trying to develop a mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting.
I thought she kind of even was making the point that's what's keeping us going, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad he mentioned his 10% quote, because I was going to mention it in the intro to him, and I was so thrown with my getting people in the room, I was just burbling. I thought I burbled. And then you're right, I forgot to bloody record the thing until he started answering. So thank you for reminding me.
I recorded it. I switched it on.
Oh, I did it my end.
Well, we both did it then, because I thought he might not see that, and I hit record. So.
Oh, well, your recording probably started before mine, so we'll probably have two recordings, and yours is. Okay, that's odd that Julia joined 8 minutes in. But,
There we are. It's going well. So,
so what time shall I send them a message?
25.
And it starts at 11:20, did it?
Yeah, 11:20 it starts.
And we have to be out of the sharing by 11:30. But I mean, we started a couple of minutes late, but I think we need to give people a chance, don't we?
Oh, we can. Yeah, you can't tell them you're going to give them a chance of feedback. How many rows have we got? Just the 4?
Yeah.
I don't know why the settings were set. They just, I don't know why they didn't apply, but the settings are as, the no mute on entry is set. So
I think it worked, actually. I just think maybe when people came in, they unmuted themselves, like Ed, or unmuted himself or something.
Yes, that's probably true.
I think it did work. It's fine. Wow.
It's okay. It's going fine. I mean, it's the Mentimeter output was good. There's only 11 people.
Yeah.
Which one was me? I have to be honest.
I hope you put a load of positive stuff in.
Yeah, things like frustrating. I picked 2 words I think that were already there. Thought, yeah, let's build that one up.
So I'm going to send a message.
Oh, there was another error. When you recreated the word cloud, you only set it to 3 entries. So you've told me to put 5 words in, but you have to.
Oh, I hadn't changed the setting.
No. Oh, 2 minutes left. That's very generous of you.
11:24 now, according to my clock.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you send it out. That's good. Fine. Yeah, by the time, the problem with all this not being out in the room is that normally you hear people as you know, saying, "What did he ask? What are we supposed to be talking about?" Or they've started talking about some other shit, and you say, "Hang on, remember what you're supposed to be talking about."
Yeah. So when we come back, you're leading the discussion by we're getting the audience to share, and then I'm going to get into a discussion with the guys about best.
Yeah, I'm doing the round robin. Let's just quickly go round. Room 1. Do they know that they were a breakout? Yeah, they will do. Breakout session 1. Yeah, whoever you're spoke to.
So just keep in note, yeah. So the breakout, just so you know, room 1 is the room that Jeremy's in, just in case you need to make a note, people. Room 2 is the one that Ed is in Andrew Spencer. Room 3 has got Martin Perks in it, and
so presumably Julia was in room 4.
Julia is in room 1 actually as well. Just
okay. Nobody in
room 4. Room 4 is the left, but there's Barry Howe and Jonathan Moore.
Well, they'll have to just say who was who.
Okay, time up. I'm going to time up.
Well, they get a minute to come back. Is what happens.
Oh shit! I've given them. I should have done that 11:25 then.
You're just being super efficient with your 2-minute thing.
But then less efficient in the closing it down thing.
Are you collecting the notes? Because we put all our stuff in the chat.
Ooh, that's good. That's a very good good question as to whether we can get the chat from the notes. Oh, the notes from the chat.
I hope you did, because I didn't write it down anywhere else.
Well, you the spokesperson for your room, Martin?
Not particularly, but we had I think probably Michael summed it up at the end pretty good. But we've all got contributions, so yeah, it's good.
Well, Michael can distill the very best idea from your room, because that's the challenge now.
Okay, how are we doing? We got everybody back.
9 seconds, everyone's back.
Okay, some people couldn't wait to jump back. That's fun.
We finished. We were really succinct.
Okay, so let's do a quick round robin on this. Room 1, who was your spokesperson, please?
I think it probably ended up as me.
Okay, Jeremy, off you go.
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, so many of us, when we were younger, will have read the tales of Beatrix Potter. And I think some of the characteristics of breakout room number 1 were like tales from Beatrix Potter. But we decided that one of the things that drove best practice were having an intelligent client, decision making done on time, constructive challenge, having inspiring leadership, enabling comms and good education, making sure everybody had a voice, that systems were well supported, and that there was a degree of external security on both the people and the project. So quite a lot of it in where it was people orientated.
It's about the people. And did you define what an intelligent client looked like or meant in any way? Or does everybody understand that?
Well, we were getting into that, Kevin, but you cut us off and brought us back to
it was Stuart. It's nothing to do with me, Jeremy. It was Stuart.
You have to solve the problems of the world in 6. I used to be a journalist. You could tell the story of the end of the world in a minute. I was trained, so you can certainly do this.
Okay, an intelligent client. So we can come back to that, but let's just quickly get the feedback and see whether that resonates with others. Room 2.
Who was in room 2? That was Kevin. Which one was room 2? So
room 2 had Ed in it, didn't it? Ed, were you in?
I didn't know what room number we were. Sorry.
Who was your spokesperson?
So I think what we talked about was early stage investment, leadership, the transition from planning through to delivery, yeah, I mean, I think some of the points that Jeremy just made, actually, funny enough, the comms, and we started to talk about the psychology of projects. Sue and Andrew were both involved in A14, which evidently was an outstanding exercise of demonstrating mobilization and delivery. And then we ran out of time, so we were starting to talk about the sort of psychology and that unified team effort to deliver.
One of the things that strikes me, since time is an issue, but we can circle around with people after this. If we'd like to carry on this forum, we can open it up again. One of the things that I raised earlier, early stage investment, who should that be by?
Early stage. Well, this is investment in both, not just financial, but also in time, enabling people the time and space to in a way get comfortable and have the time to be. There was the word rushed was mentioned a lot in the that chat sort of piece you put up earlier, and just allowing a sort of a calmness to arrive within the constituent stakeholders seemed to me to sort of resonate a little bit. But it's an investment not just in money but also in time. And one of the conversations I've had over the past week is that contingency, knowing that you've got more than enough budget to develop a project.
That's helpful.
Drop dead piece.
Martin, you were in room 3. Who's your spokesperson?
Sorry, Sue.
Okay.
It's fine. Over to Martin.
So I'm not sure anybody want to do. I've made a few notes of what we talked about, if that's any help.
Why don't you go with those?
So we talked a lot more about people. So we were talking about making sure that aligned goals and aligned drivers from all the participants. So there was a bit of discussion about or explanation about joining lots of companies together. They generally have different drivers, and so kind of creating the space to align those drivers and goals is good. Building trust, finding ways to build trust quickly, and even though you might allow 2-3 months to get a team together, actually that's a really short period of time to build underlying trust. Getting the right people for the right functions, that's one of the things that if you find out actually you've got the wrong skill sets, that can frustrate a team. And the other thing was understanding the deal. So making sure that absolutely everybody within the team understands what it is that their bit of the jigsaw has signed up to, and how they contribute to the overall objective of the team.
That's really helpful. And this whole trust thing is something that's very dear to our hearts. And Stu, at the end of this, I appreciate if you would give some insight to that. So let's just quickly get the 4th team's input. So if you haven't spoken yet, it's your turn.
I think we nominated Barry, did we?
Okay. The key focus of our discussion really has centered on relationships rather than process, trying to deliver large, complex infrastructure projects. If you stick to the way in which you've done it previously, it isn't going to work. And it's down to forming relationships and maintaining relationships over a long period of time. Interesting point made by Martin related to understanding how it is that you're contracting. I think if you go back to Ministry of Defense and their gold standard for contracting, they looked at various global organizations, and I think it was the American Defense Department. They run the equivalent of a pop quiz related to their contract once they're in contract, and it's a bit of fun that just tests each party's understanding of what it is that they've just agreed to. Something I'm very keen to roll out on the next one.
Well, lots of good things. Stuart, you wanted to come in.
Well, yeah, three things came out. I mean, all about people, right? Everyone said that. Alignment, critical, clear leadership, critical early decision making, relationships, and trust underpinning it. And I just thought there's quite a good cue for me to share very quickly our trust model, which hopefully you can. Are you seeing the right thing there? Are you seeing? What are you seeing?
You're seeing the wrong PowerPoint, Stu.
Okay, let me just let me share the right thing, and then you can be dazzled by my brilliance. There we go. So this is our trust model, and we use this in the workshops, the work we do with clients, and define the questions. And I think it captures some of what was said. The dimensions of trust are those three there in our view. Those are the 3 dimensions of trust. So capability, everyone needs to be clear what it is they're meant to do, as was just said, and what they're capable of doing, and also what they may need to do in the future. So really articulating that. But the other side of it, the character piece, really setting out clearly what are the behaviours that we're all expected to demonstrate and how we're going to hold each other accountable for that. But the final piece there is clarity, the third C, and that's critical. And Julie talked about alignment. This is about shared ambition, shared purpose, being clear what we're all here to do, and really talking about what that means. So spending time on this stuff. And one of the great things we think at Mobilisation, where this works well, is wargaming. So looking ahead and saying, okay, based on these 3 questions, let's look ahead at this project. Let's wargame it over the next, whatever the period is, year, 2 years, 10 years. There are certain things we know are going to happen, right? We know certain things are going to be great, but we know certain things are going to go wrong. We're going to discover something we didn't anticipate. We're going to disagree over a cost of something. This is all going to happen. We've all seen it before. So let's talk about those situations against these 3 criteria and work out how we will choose to solve these so that we are consistently all working towards the purpose and that we've defined and our ambition that we've defined together and the behaviours we've said we're going to demonstrate. This isn't just a PowerPoint at the beginning of the project. This is something we're going to continue to review. And the second thing is there's a bunch of things that are going to happen that we can't anticipate. COVID-19, right? Who knew? So how we can't describe those, but we can still apply the same process to how we respond. And we think that's a very powerful way to establish trust, as long as it's a working document, not something that's just a few PowerPoints at the beginning of the project. Anyway, with that, let me go back to our panel.
Before we do, Stu, Sue Tompkins, you raised your hand, and
Forgive me, I didn't see that.
Really like to hear what you'd like to contribute.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I was just building on a point which Ed made before we moved on to the third group, which was about the investment in the mobilisation. And it reminded me of one particular project which I supported, where multiple organisations came together and they were all on different commercial contracts. Some of the contracts allowed them the flexibility of the mobilisation, some of the contracts didn't, where they were literally paid for the time that the bums were on the seats, and that didn't allow them the luxury of the team building. And it therefore made a real tension in terms of those who could contribute and those who couldn't, and many felt left out. So there's actually, when we're talking about alignment, there's some really important preceding stuff that's got to be done before the mobilisation, or else you haven't got the environment to allow that to happen.
Let me come to Martin on that, because alignment, you're talking about alignment of contracts, of what we're all here to do, and the incentivisation as well as ambition. I can see that's really. Martin, in terms of RDP and the work, you've done so much work to build teams at the centre of the RDP programme. What do you think about best practice, and what do you think about what you've heard so far in terms of what you're trying to do?
I 1000% agree with what Sue's just said, and aligning not just the delivery integration partner for us, but also our technical advisors and the people who come and support in commercial and in project management and all those things, making sure that everybody is aligned to a common goal. One of the things that we held really strongly all the way through the development of RDP was having a principal idea of having a golden thread. So what was our outcome? What was the actual outcome that we wanted from this model? And how do you then pin the golden thread on your outcome and run it all the way back through all of the contracts, so that everybody, right from subcontracts, subcontractors, suppliers, all can see how, when they contribute to the team, it's going to lead to the outcome of the model. And so that whole thing of aligning drivers and aligning outcomes and goals doesn't just relate to the client and the tier one. It's about how do you get that across the whole community. This is an ecosystem. We've talked about ecosystems before, Stuart and Kevin. And unless everybody within the ecosystem can see how what they do contributes to the outcome, the goal, it doesn't work. It breaks down. There's a contract that is counterintuitive, or people's behavior become predictably irrational. You know, rational behavior is acting inside the agreement that you've got. Predictable irrationality is when you know you've got agreement, but you do something completely different just because your drivers are misaligned. That whole thing was a real focus of the way that we created this ecosystem set of contracts. So absolutely agree.
Just quickly on that, at mobilisation stage, if you would, I don't know how much you do this now in RDP. If you were wargaming, what is going to go wrong? You just said exactly. You said, look, people. My experience is people don't behave rationally in the way you've just described. Here's an example of it. What are we going to? Can anyone, airing that as an issue right up front? Does that happen? And if so, what impact does that have?
Well, not only does it happen, the biggest challenge for us was we have a group of people inside our business, the major projects people, who deal directly with the interface with the supply chain. That's not the issue. The issue is when you go back into the business and you've got finance and the standards people and the GCO, the government, the general counsel office, and the HR departments and all of those other bits that aren't related directly to the interface between the client and the supply chain. That's as big a part of the ecosystem as the supply chain past the tier one. And it's that sort of holistic view of how you actually create the client to be able to entirely holistically respond to this as a relationship. That's as important as the part of that we all sort of focus on, which is where the contract then leads into a supply ecosystem.
Now, Julia, let me come to you. You're a lawyer by background, and you're at the centre of this massive piece of infrastructure that is proposed. Someone's already said, Simon's put in the chat, we need to move away from master servant contracts. And one of the issues is, how do you build contracts that move away from that, to build their own culture? And secondly, in relation to that, and as a lawyer, you'll have been involved in a lot of contracts, the tier twos and tier threes, they may not be at the table at this stage. Who's going to pay them to invest the time in relationship building, team building, right at this mobilisation stage? How do you get around that, do you think?
What we're trying to do is to, exactly as Martin says, get away from the whole master servant thing and regard the project as a massive collective effort. So what we've done practically so far is we've formed a consortium of about 150 companies. And the purpose of forming the consortium is to really engage in collective lobbying, not just for the project to happen, but also for the project to happen in a way which actually works for the supply chain, and in working for the supply chain works for consumers. And so have really early soft discussions around things like union agreements and so on, so that everybody's talking about stuff softly for quite a long time before we suddenly launch into hard negotiation on exactly what the terms will be. And in terms of the master servant, what we're aiming for is that if the government introduces a regulated asset-based model, the absolutely key thing is to align incentives. But how do you do that? Everybody knows it's the key thing. How do you do it? What we're aiming to do is to move towards contracts which pay actual costs incurred, move away from fixed price contracts for on-site labour, fixed price for equipment, but for on-site labour, contracts which repay actual cost and which take out things like hidden profits on things like subcontracting or plant hire, and ascribe all of the profit to a higher than usual incentivization margin, and that's achieved by working together.
Now, we're just in terms of time, we're approaching in, but since we started that, I hope people will bear with us. Those that have to drop off, obviously, please do so, but stick with us for a few minutes. Just want to ask you about that. The 150, so that we're thinking here about team building. So that would be great if you finally get the green light. The 150 already built some sense of esprit de corps, one hopes. Mm-hmm. Are they guaranteed to get the work, or are they likely to get the work as well, in terms of for their efforts or not?
Well, it's a mixture of contractors who are already part of the Hinkley Point C project, and because we are aiming to replicate key roles, which doesn't obviously mean replicating everything, but we're aiming to replicate key roles. For example, Lang O'Rourke will be the civils contractor. But below that level, no, people aren't absolutely guaranteed work. But what we are hoping is that by joining the consortium and understanding where we're getting to on a whole range of key issues, they will be much better placed to win the work when it's competed.
Right. Kevin, do you want to? I think we should go to our next exercise and begin to.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And while we do that, I would just like perhaps Jeremy to reflect. This is a big issue. to me is, how do we engage tier threes when they don't have the resources to put in on a hope for business? These are relatively small businesses, so perhaps you've got some thoughts. But just before you start talking about those, I'd invite everybody, go back to your phone, and you've got a free form box here, and just tell us if there's one key idea that you'll take away from today, and we'll gather those up and we'll publicize the whole thing later. So Jeremy, what are your thoughts about how do we motivate tier threes to risk this kind of cost?
Yeah. So what I've found in this scenario is you're effectively forming a joint venture at the beginning. At the beginning, it might be started with goodwill, but like any joint venture, if in the course of your project it's not successful for everybody, it falls apart. And so companies might be once or twice persuaded to try this. We'll have some upfront investment in whatever the team building or relationship developing processes are. But if it leads to nothing in the end, because a legal director or a commercial director in a client organization says, sorry, you weren't the cheapest, we've picked this one over here, then the whole thing just falls apart for the tier 3 company. You know, and the lack of good team building that we've all been talking about, Julia's been talking about, Martin's been talking about, has consequences down the road, which right at the beginning you can't focus on in terms of what's the cost of the bid. And you know, not having transparency all the way up through the project chain from tier 3 to tier 2 to tier 1, the controlling minds, the project director at the top, does not have proper line of sight of behaviors that are going wrong, of issues under the project which are under threat. There's no effective alignment on the possibilities of project savings. There's sort of all the indicators on the project become backward looking, not forward looking. And people like me, non-execs like me, turn up at company boards and say, well, what's happening? Well, we're always looking backwards. What we actually want to drive is good team building so that things are looked forwards and solve things when they're a drama, not when they're a crisis.
That's great. Thank you, Jeremy. I think that's really good, and it's kind of picking up. So, Stuart, do you want to close us up?
Just to finish by thanking you. One of the comments in this here that's coming out is all about people, but I think what Jeremy's highlighted there, and based on what Julie says, it's also about trust, building trust, isn't it? So if if those people who got involved don't get some work, you know, or if people have got involved early but have been promised work, I'm not saying you've done that, Julia, but in other cases, and it doesn't happen, or if things that promises made aren't kept, trust gets diminished and the team building gets diminished too. So we think that that's obviously a key component. It came out today along with this point about relationship building, focusing on the people aspects as well as the technical aspects of these projects. Thanks everyone for your time. This has been an experiment for us to do it as a Zoom meeting rather than as a webinar, because we want to break people out into rooms. It's been an interesting one. I think it's been very, very productive. We really appreciate both the panelists and participants getting involved, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
One more slide that you just want to show, Stu.
Oh, there is. Thank you. Yeah, if you don't go, you don't miss that slide. There it is. We recorded this. We'll share it afterwards. You can share it with colleagues. And there are our emails and our website for anyone who wants to get in touch with us.
Thank you for